The frozen lake cracked beneath Victoria Owens's boots, a sound like distant thunder that made her heart stop. And in that split second before her husband's hand struck her back, she understood that he had brought her out here to kill her. The December wind howled across the Colorado plains as she fell forward, the impact driving the air from her lungs before the ice gave way completely. The water was so cold it felt like fire, stealing her breath, her scream, her ability to think. She plunged beneath the surface, her heavy wool coat and layers of petticoats dragging her down into the black depths of the lake. Above her, through the fractured ice, she could see the distorted image of Richard Owens, her husband of 3 bitter years, standing motionless on the shore, watching her die. Victoria thrashed against the current that pulled at her skirts, her lungs burning as she fought to reach the hole in the ice. Her fingers scraped against the underside of the frozen surface, finding only solid barrier where she could have sworn the opening had been. The current had shifted her, turned her around in the dark water. She could not find the way up. Her throat convulsed, desperate for air that would only be her death if she allowed it in. Black spots danced in her vision as she clawed at the ice, her nails breaking against the unyielding surface. She was 24 years old, and she was going to die in a frozen lake outside Fort Lyon, Colorado, murdered by the man who had promised to love and protect her. The irony was not lost on her, even as consciousness began to slip away. Then the ice above her exploded inward. A hand plunged through the water, strong fingers closing around her wrist with iron determination. She felt herself being pulled upward with such force that her shoulders screamed in protest, but she did not care. Air. She needed air. Her head broke the surface and she gasped, choking on water and wind and the most beautiful cold air she had ever tasted. Strong arms hauled her up onto the ice, then dragged her across the frozen surface toward the shore. "I have got you," a man's voice said, rough and urgent. "Keep breathing. Stay with me." Victoria could not stop coughing, could not stop shaking, could not make her body obey any command. She was dimly aware of being lifted, of being carried away from the lake, of raised voices cutting through the howl of the wind. Then there was warmth, blessed warmth, and the crackle of fire, and hands removing her frozen clothing with efficient, impersonal movements. "Get more blankets," the same voice commanded, "and hot water, not boiling, just warm. We need to bring her temperature up slowly or we will lose her. Is she going to die?" That was a woman's voice, older, worried. "Not if I have any say in it." Victoria tried to open her eyes, but her lashes were frozen shut. Someone was rubbing her hands, her arms, her feet, working life back into limbs that felt like dead wood. A warm blanket was wrapped around her shoulders, then another, then another. Something warm was pressed to her lips. "Drink," the man's voice said, closer now. "Just a sip. It will help." She managed to swallow, the liquid burning down her throat. Tea, she realized. Hot tea with something stronger in it. She coughed again, and this time when she opened her eyes, her lashes parted. The face that swam into view was sun-weathered and strong, with piercing blue eyes that studied her with intense concentration. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and a few days' worth of beard shadowed his jaw. He was young, perhaps 27 or 28, and there was something about the set of his shoulders, the way he carried himself, that spoke of capability and confidence. "Welcome back," he said, and the corner of his mouth lifted in something that was not quite a smile. "You gave us a scare." "My husband," Victoria managed to whisper, her voice raw. "He pushed me." The man's expression hardened, but he said nothing. He simply continued to rub warmth back into her hands, his touch careful and methodical. Behind him, Victoria could see they were in a small cabin, rustic but well-maintained. A fire roared in the stone hearth. An older woman with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun was heating water over the flames. "Where is he?" Victoria asked. "Where is Richard?" "Your husband left." The man's voice was carefully neutral. Rode off as soon as I pulled you from the water. Claimed you had fallen through the ice and he could not reach you. Said he was going for help. He pushed me. Victoria's teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. He brought me out to the lake and he pushed me. He meant for me to die. The man's jaw tightened, but he nodded slowly. I believe you. Rest now. We can talk about this when you are stronger. Who are you? Victoria asked. Name is Jackson Turner, he said. Most folks call me Jack. This is my Aunt Martha. You're safe here, miss, I promise you that. Victoria wanted to say more, wanted to explain, but exhaustion was pulling her under like the current in the lake. Her eyes drifted shut, and this time, when the darkness came, she did not fight it. She woke to the smell of stew and the low murmur of voices. The cabin was dim, lit only by firelight and the weak gray light filtering through the single window. Her body ached in ways she had never imagined, every muscle screaming in protest as she tried to sit up. Easy, Jackson Turner said, appearing at her side with a bowl in his hands. You have been through hell. Take it slow. Victoria accepted the bowl gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. She was wearing a nightgown that was not hers, clean and soft, and about 2 sizes too large. Someone had braided her dark hair, still damp, over one shoulder. She took a tentative sip of the stew and nearly moaned at the taste. Venison and vegetables, rich and hearty. How long have I been here? She asked. 2 days, Jackson said, settling into a chair near the bed. He held his own bowl but did not eat, watching her instead. You developed a fever the first night. Had us worried for a while, but you are a fighter. 2 days. Victoria's mind reeled. Richard would have returned to their house by now, would have spun whatever story he had concocted to explain her death. Perhaps he had even begun mourning her publicly. The grieving widower who lost his young wife to a tragic accident. I need to go back to town, she said. I need to tell people what happened. Do you? Jackson's blue eyes were steady on hers. What do you think will happen if you show up in Fort Lyon and accuse your husband of trying to murder you? Who do you think they will believe? The respected businessman who has lived there for 5 years, or his wife, who everyone knows has been unhappy in her marriage? Victoria flinched at the blunt truth of his words. Richard was well liked in Fort Lyon, a prosperous merchant who supplied goods to half the territory. He was charming and generous in public, the kind of man people trusted. No one knew what he was like behind closed doors, how his charm turned to cruelty the moment they were alone, how his hands that held hers so gently in public left bruises where no one could see. So what am I supposed to do? She asked, hating how her voice broke. Let him get away with it? I am not saying that, Jackson said carefully. I am saying you need to be smart about this. You need to be strategic. Rushing back to town with accusations will only get you hurt, or worse. Your husband thinks you are dead. Let him keep thinking that, at least for now, while we figure out what to do next. We? Victoria looked at him with confusion. Why would you help me? You do not even know me. Jackson was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. 3 years ago, my sister married a man who seemed like a good catch. Wealthy, respectable, everything a woman could want. 6 months later, she was dead. Fell down the stairs, he said. Tragic accident. And everyone believed him because he cried at the funeral and seemed so devastated. His voice had gone hard, bitter. But I knew. I knew he had killed her, just like I know your husband tried to kill you. I could not save Mary, but I can help you, if you will let me. Victoria felt tears prick at her eyes, the first real emotion she had allowed herself since waking. I'm sorry about your sister. So am I. Jackson finally looked away, staring into the fire. But maybe some good can come of it, if I can keep the same thing from happening to you. Why were you at the lake? Victoria asked suddenly. How did you find me? A ghost of a smile crossed Jackson's face. Luck. Fate. Divine intervention. Take your pick. I was tracking an elk, following its trail across the frozen lake, when I saw you and your husband. Something about the way he was acting did not sit right with me. The way he kept looking around, like he was making sure no one was watching. So I stopped and waited. And then I saw him push you, saw the ice give way. He stood there, watching, making sure you went under. Then he turned and rode off. His jaw clenched. I have never moved so fast in my life. By the time I reached the hole, the current had dragged you under the ice, had to break through to reach you. You saved my life, Victoria said softly. Anyone would have done the same. No, she said firmly. They would not have. Most people would have assumed it was an accident, would have been too afraid to break through the ice themselves. You risked your life for a stranger. That is not nothing. Jackson shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Well, you are not a stranger anymore, and now we need to figure out what comes next. You cannot stay here forever. Martha and I live simple, but we do not have much in the way of resources. And eventually, someone is going to come looking. What if I went somewhere else? Victoria said slowly, the idea forming as she spoke. What if I left Colorado entirely? Started over somewhere new where Richard could not find me. You have money for that? Jackson asked practically. Supplies? A way to get there? Victoria's heart sank. She had nothing. Everything she owned was in the house she had shared with Richard, and she could hardly march back in and demand her belongings. She had no family, no one to turn to. Her parents had died when she was 19, and she had married Richard a year later, desperate for security and stability. What a fool she had been. I could work, she said, lifting her chin. I can cook, clean, sew. I could earn my way. It is the middle of winter, Jackson pointed out gently. Not many people hiring. And a woman traveling alone, that is dangerous, especially a woman running from something. Then what do you suggest? Victoria asked, frustration bleeding into her voice. I cannot stay here indefinitely. I cannot go back to town. What options do I have? Jackson leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You stay here until spring. Martha can use the help, and it will give you time to heal, to get your strength back. Come March or April, when the weather clears, I will take you to Denver. It is a big enough city that you can disappear, find work, make a new life, and it is far enough from Fort Lyon that your husband is not likely to find you. Why would you do all that for me? Victoria whispered. Because it is the right thing to do, Jackson said simply, and because I can. I have got a ranch about 10 miles from here, cattle and horses. Martha helps me run it. We do well enough that we can spare the food and space. And like I said, the extra help would be welcome. Victoria studied him, searching his face for any sign of deception or hidden motive, but all she saw was earnest sincerity and a deep, bone-weary sadness that she recognized because she felt it herself. They were both carrying the weight of loss and betrayal, both trying to find their way through the darkness. All right, she said finally, I will stay until spring, and I will work for my keep. I do not want charity. Would not dream of it, Jackson said, and this time his smile was genuine. Martha will put you to work soon enough. Fair warning, she is a taskmaster. I heard that, Martha called from across the cabin, and Jackson laughed. It was a good sound, warm and rich, and Victoria found herself smiling despite everything. Perhaps, she thought, there was hope after all. The days fell into a pattern. Victoria's strength returned slowly, aided by Martha's cooking and the simple physical work of helping run the household. She learned to make bread from scratch, to churn butter, to preserve meat and vegetables for the long winter. Her hands, which had been soft and pale from her years as Richard's wife, grew calloused and capable. Her body, which had been weak from too little food and too much stress, grew stronger. Jackson came by the cabin most days, checking on her progress, bringing news from town when he had it. Richard had held a funeral for her, he reported, a somber affair attended by most of Fort Lyon. The grieving widower had accepted condolences with appropriate dignity, had even shed tears at the graveside. The thought made Victoria sick, but she said nothing. Let Richard think he had won. Let him mourn the wife he had tried to murder. His day of reckoning would come. In the evenings, after the work was done, Jackson would stay for dinner. They would sit by the fire, and he would tell her stories about the ranch, about the land, about his life. He had been born in Missouri, he said, but had come west after the war, looking for something he could not quite name. Freedom, maybe. Purpose. A chance to build something that was his own. He had worked as a ranch hand, a horsebreaker, even a scout for the army for a time. 3 years ago, he had saved enough to buy his own land, and he had been building his herd ever since. It is not much yet, he admitted one night, whittling a piece of wood by the firelight. But it is mine. Every cow, every acre. No one can take that away from me. That must be a good feeling, Victoria said wistfully. She was mending one of Martha's dresses, her needle moving in steady practice strokes, owning something that is truly yours. You will have it too, Jackson said with certainty. In Denver, you can be whoever you want to be. No one will know your history. You can start fresh. I hope you are right. Victoria bit off the thread and examined her work. Tell me more about Denver. I have never been to a real city. So Jackson described the bustling streets, the grand hotels, the shops and theaters and churches. He painted a picture of a place vibrant with life and possibility, where a woman could find honest work and make her own way. Victoria listened, hungry for every detail, trying to imagine herself in that world. As the weeks passed, she found herself watching Jackson more closely, the way he moved with easy confidence, comfortable in his own skin, the way he spoke to Martha with affection and respect, always helping with the heavy work without being asked, the way he handled the horses when he rode up to the cabin, gentle but firm, earning their trust rather than demanding it. He was kind, she realized, genuinely kind, in a way that had nothing to do with manipulation or control. It was simply who he was, and he was handsome. She had noticed that from the beginning, of course, but now it struck her in new ways. The strength of his hands as he carried firewood, the line of his shoulders beneath his wool coat, the rare, brilliant smile that transformed his serious face. She found herself looking forward to his visits, to the sound of his voice, to the way he looked at her like she was a person worth knowing rather than a possession to be controlled. It was dangerous, she knew. She had just escaped one marriage. The last thing she needed was to develop feelings for another man, especially one who was helping her out of pure goodness. She could not repay his kindness by complicating things with emotions he probably did not share. So she tried to bury the warmth that bloomed in her chest when he smiled at her, tried to ignore the way her heart jumped when their hands accidentally brushed as they reached for the same dish at dinner. But it was hard. So hard. January gave way to February, and with it came a blizzard that buried the cabin in snow. Jackson rode out before the worst of it hit, making sure they had enough firewood and supplies to last. Then he was gone, back to his own ranch before the roads became impassable, and Victoria was surprised by how much she missed him. The storm lasted 3 days, howling around the cabin like a living thing. Martha taught her to play cards, and they spent long hours by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. Martha told her about her own life, about the husband she had loved and lost to cholera, about the children she had never been able to have, about how she had come to live with her nephew, finding purpose in helping him build his dream. "He is a good man, my Jackson," Martha said one evening, her knitting needles clicking steadily. "Too good sometimes. He takes on other people's burdens like they are his own. Always has, even as a boy." "He told me about his sister," Victoria said quietly. "About Mary." Martha's hands stilled. "That nearly broke him. He loved her fierce, the way siblings do when they have lost their parents young. He tried to warn her about that man, but she would not listen. Thought she knew better." And then it was too late. She looked up, her eyes sharp. He sees you as a second chance, you know. A way to make right what went wrong with Mary. I know, Victoria said. I just hope I do not disappoint him. You would not. Martha's voice was firm. You are stronger than you know, child. I can see it in you. You have been beaten down, but you are not broken. Give yourself time. You will find your way. When the storm finally cleared, Jackson returned, snow-crusted and half-frozen but grinning. He had brought supplies, including a package wrapped in brown paper, that he handed to Victoria with uncharacteristic shyness. What is this? She asked, surprised. Open it and see. Inside was a dress, simple but well made, in a deep blue that reminded her of the summer sky. Not one of Martha's old ones, altered to fit, but new fabric, sewn specifically for her. Victoria stared at it, then at Jackson, her throat tight. You said you had nothing of your own, he said, his ears turning red. Figured you should have at least one thing that is yours. Martha helped with the measurements and such. If it does not fit right, she can alter it. It is perfect, Victoria managed. Thank you. You did not have to do this. I wanted to, Jackson said simply. Then, as if embarrassed by his own gesture, he turned away. I should get back. Got cattle to check on. Just wanted to make sure you two were all right after the storm. Stay for dinner, Martha called. I made pot roast. Well, in that case, Jackson said, and they all laughed. That night, Victoria wore the blue dress. It fit perfectly, hugging her waist before falling in soft folds to her ankles. She had brushed her hair until it shone and left it loose down her back. When Jackson looked at her, something flickered in his eyes, something that made her breath catch. But he said nothing. And the moment passed. After dinner, Martha excused herself early, claiming fatigue. Victoria and Jackson were left alone by the fire, the silence between them comfortable but charged with something unspoken. The dress really does look nice on you, Jackson said finally. The color suits you. Thank you again, Victoria said. It has been a long time since anyone gave me something just to be kind. Richard, he bought me things, but they always came with strings attached. A new hat meant I owed him obedience. A piece of jewelry meant I was not allowed to question him. Nothing was ever just a gift. That is not love, Jackson said, his voice rough. That is ownership, and you deserve better than that. I know that now, Victoria said. But when I married him, I thought I was so lucky. He was successful, established. He seemed so kind at first. I did not see the truth until it was too late. How did you end up marrying him? Jackson asked, if you do not mind me asking. Victoria was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. My parents died when I was 19. Fever took them both within a week of each other. They left me the house, but not much else. I tried to make it on my own, but it was hard. I was lonely and scared and struggling. Richard started courting me, bringing me flowers, taking me to church socials. He was charming and attentive, and I thought he was my salvation. We married 6 months after we met. And when did things change? Almost immediately, Victoria said bitterly. The night of our wedding, he told me that everything I owned was now his, including me, that I would obey him in all things or face the consequences. I thought he was joking at first, but he was not. The first time I questioned one of his decisions, he slapped me hard enough to split my lip. Then he apologized, said he had lost his temper, that it would not happen again. But it did. Again and again. Jackson's hands had clenched into fists, his jaw tight. I am sorry. No one should have to live like that. I tried to leave once, Victoria continued, the words spilling out now that she had started. About a year into the marriage, I packed a bag and made it as far as the edge of town before he found me. Dragged me back home, locked me in the bedroom for 3 days with no food, told everyone I was sick, that I needed rest. When he finally let me out, he said if I ever tried to leave again, he would kill me. And I believed him. So he brought you to the lake to make good on that promise, Jackson said. What changed? Why did he decide to kill you then? Victoria took a shaky breath. I heard him talking to another woman. He had brought her to the house when he thought I was out visiting a neighbor. But I had come home early and heard them in his study. She was laughing, asking when he was going to be free. And he said soon that he was tired of playing the devoted husband, that he wanted to marry her instead. But divorce was out of the question. It would ruin his reputation. So he had a better solution. He planned to murder you so he could marry his mistress, Jackson said flatly. What a piece of work. I confronted him that evening, Victoria said. Told him I knew what he was planning. He just smiled and said I should not worry about things that were above my understanding. 2 days later, he suggested we go for a walk by the frozen lake. Said the fresh air would do me good. I was terrified, but I did not know what else to do. If I refused, he would have known I suspected something. If I ran, he would have caught me. So I went, hoping maybe I was wrong. Maybe he really did just want to take a walk. She laughed, a broken sound. I was not wrong. Jackson was beside her suddenly, kneeling in front of her chair, taking her hands in his. Listen to me, Victoria. You are safe now. He cannot hurt you anymore. And I swear to you, I will do everything in my power to make sure he never gets the chance to try. Victoria looked down at their joined hands, at the way his calloused fingers wrapped around hers with such care. Why do you care so much? She whispered. You barely know me. Maybe I do not know your whole history, Jackson said. But I know what I see. A woman with strength and courage who survived things that would have broken most people. A woman who deserves a chance at happiness, at a real life. And maybe I care because I have spent the last 3 years blaming myself for not saving my sister, and helping you feels like maybe I can make up for that failure, even just a little. It was not your fault, Victoria said fiercely. What happened to Mary, that was on her husband, not on you. I know that in my head, Jackson said. But my heart is a different story. Just like you know in your head that you did nothing to deserve what Richard did to you. But I would wager your heart still carries some of that blame. He was right, Victoria realized. Some part of her still wondered what she could have done differently, how she could have prevented Richard's cruelty. As if love and obedience could have changed his nature, could have transformed him into the man she had believed him to be. We are a pair, are not we? She said, and found herself smiling despite the heaviness of the conversation. Both carrying guilt that is not ours to carry. Then maybe we can help each other let it go, Jackson said. He squeezed her hands once, then released them, standing up and stepping back. It is getting late. I should head home before the temperature drops any further. Be careful, Victoria said, rising as well. And Jackson, thank you for everything. Any time, he said, and the warmth in his eyes made her chest tight. After he left, Martha emerged from her room, not looking the least bit sleepy. That boy is falling in love with you, she said without preamble. And unless I miss my guess, you feel the same. Martha, Victoria protested, but the older woman held up a hand. I am not blind, child, and I am not judging, but I want you to think carefully about what you want. Jackson, he is the kind of man who loves with his whole heart. If you let this grow into something more, you need to be sure. He has been hurt enough. So have I, Victoria said quietly. And I am not ready for this. I am not ready to trust another man, to put my heart in someone else's hands, even someone as good as Jackson. Then you best figure out how to stop what is already happening, Martha said, not unkindly. Because ready or not, feelings have a way of growing whether we want them to or not. Victoria lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, Martha's words echoing in her mind. She tried to tell herself that what she felt for Jackson was gratitude, nothing more. He had saved her life. Of course she cared about him. That did not mean she was falling in love with him. But she could not deny the way her pulse quickened when she heard his horse outside, the way she caught herself watching the door, waiting for him to arrive. the way his smile could chase away the shadows that still lingered from her years with Richard, the way she felt safe with him, truly safe, in a way she had never felt with anyone. She was falling in love with Jackson Turner, and the realization terrified her. The weeks continued to pass, winter slowly loosening its grip on the land. Victoria threw herself into work, trying to outrun the feelings that grew stronger every day. But Jackson kept coming around, kept being kind and patient and understanding. He never pushed, never demanded anything from her. He was just there, steady as the sunrise. One afternoon in late February, he arrived with a young colt, barely a year old, dancing nervously at the end of a lead rope. "Thought you might like to meet Scout," he said. "He is going to be a fine horse once he is trained, but right now he is greener than grass. Figured you could help me gentle him." Victoria approached slowly, extending her hand for the colt to sniff. He was beautiful, all long legs and curious eyes, his coat a rich chestnut. "Why do you want me to help?" she asked. "Because horses can tell when someone has a gentle spirit," Jackson said, "and because I think you could use something to care for, something that is yours." So Victoria spent the next few weeks working with Scout, under Jackson's patient instruction. She learned to read the colt's body language, to move with confidence but never aggression. She learned to earn his trust rather than demand it, to reward good behavior and redirect bad. It was slow, painstaking work, but deeply satisfying. And working side by side with Jackson, their shoulders sometimes brushing, their voices low and calm for the horse's benefit, felt like the most natural thing in the world. "You are good at this," Jackson told her one day, watching as Scout nuzzled her palm looking for treats. "You have got the touch." "I like that he doesn't care about my past," Victoria said, stroking the colt's nose. "He doesn't know I was married to a monster. He doesn't judge me for staying as long as I did. He just knows I am kind to him now, and that is enough." "People who matter will feel the same way," Jackson said quietly. Victoria looked at him, her heart in her throat. "Do you? Do I what? Do you think less of me? For staying with Richard? For not fighting harder?" Jackson moved closer, his expression serious. "Victoria, I think you are one of the bravest people I have ever met. You survived. That is what matters. You did what you had to do to stay alive, and there is no shame in that, none at all." Tears pricked at her eyes, and before she could think better of it, she closed the distance between them and wrapped her arms around him. Jackson went still for a moment. Then his arms came around her, holding her close. He was warm and solid and safe, and Victoria allowed herself to simply rest in his embrace. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest, "for seeing me as more than a victim." "You are so much more than that," Jackson murmured into her hair. "You are strong and capable and brave, and anyone who cannot see that is a fool." They stood like that for a long moment, the colt nosing at them curiously, until Victoria finally pulled back. Jackson let her go immediately, stepping back to give her space, but his eyes held a warmth that made her skin tingle. "We should probably get Scout back to the barn," he said, his voice slightly rough. "It is getting cold." "Yes," Victoria agreed, though she was not cold at all. She felt flushed, her heart racing. That would be wise. March arrived with unseasonably warm weather, the snow beginning to melt in earnest. Jackson started talking about the trip to Denver, about the best routes, and where they would stop along the way. He made it sound simple, easy, but Victoria could hear the reluctance in his voice. He did not want her to go. And God help her, she did not want to go either. But what choice did she have? She could not stay here forever, living in Martha's cabin, existing in this strange limbo between her old life and whatever came next. She needed to build something real, something sustainable. And she could not do that in Fort Lyon, not with Richard still there, still believing he had gotten away with murder. "When do you think we should leave?" she asked Jackson one evening. They were sitting on the porch of the cabin, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. Early April? If the weather holds, that would work, Jackson said. He was whittling again, his knife moving with practiced ease. Give us time to make the trip before spring rains turn the roads to mud. What will you do after you drop me off? Victoria asked. Just ride back? That is the plan. Jackson did not look up from his work. Unless you need me to stay longer, help you get settled. I could not ask that of you. You have done so much already. You are not asking. I am offering. Finally, he looked at her, his blue eyes intense. Victoria, I need you to know something. If you want to go to Denver, start a new life there, I will help you do that. But if you want something different, if you want to stay here, that is an option too. Victoria's breath caught. Stay here? What do you mean? Jackson set down his whittling, turning to face her fully. I mean stay in Colorado. Not in Fort Lyon, but nearby. There are other towns, places where Richard has no influence. Or you could stay at the ranch, with me, with us, Martha and I. We could use the help, and you would have a home, a place where you are safe and welcome. Jackson, Victoria said carefully, her heart pounding. What are you saying? He took a deep breath, and for the first time since she had met him, he looked nervous. I am saying that I have feelings for you. Strong feelings. I did not mean for it to happen, did not plan it. But spending these months with you, getting to know you, watching you grow stronger and more confident every day, I have fallen in love with you, Victoria. And if there is even a chance that you might feel the same, I would like you to stay. Not as a hired hand or out of obligation, but because you want to be here. With me. Victoria stared at him, her mind racing. Everything she had told herself, all the walls she had built around her heart, came crashing down in the face of his honest, open declaration. I am terrified, she whispered. I am terrified of trusting again, of believing that love can be real and good. What if I am wrong about you? What if you change? I cannot promise I am perfect, Jackson said steadily. I am not. I get stubborn and grumpy when I am tired. I work too hard sometimes and forget to eat. I snore, according to Martha. But I can promise you this. I will never hurt you. I will never raise my hand to you or my voice in anger. I will never try to control you or make you feel small. And I will spend every day trying to be the kind of man worthy of your trust. I already trust you, Victoria said, the truth of it ringing through her. I think I have for a while now. I just did not want to admit it because it scared me so much. But I do. I trust you, Jackson Turner, and I think I love you too. The smile that broke across Jackson's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. You think? I know, Victoria corrected, and then she was laughing, crying, reaching for him. I know I love you. I love your kindness and your strength and the way you look at me like I matter. I love that you saved my life and then kept saving it every single day by showing me what goodness looks like. I love you and I want to stay, if you truly mean it. I mean it, Jackson said fervently, cupping her face in his hands. I have never meant anything more in my life. Stay with me, Victoria. Let me show you what real love can be. Yes, she breathed, and then his lips were on hers, gentle and questioning and perfect. She kissed him back, pouring all her hope and fear and love into that single point of connection. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and she melted into him, finally allowing herself to believe that this was real, that she deserved this happiness. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. I want to marry you, he said. Not right away, whenever you are ready. But I want you to know that is where my heart is heading. I want that too, Victoria said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. But you are right. Not yet. I need time to let go of the fear, to truly believe this is real. Can you be patient with me? I would wait forever if that is what you needed, Jackson said simply. But I have got a feeling it would not take that long. From inside the cabin, Martha's voice called out, "Are you two finished making moon eyes at each other? Supper is getting cold." They broke apart, laughing, and Jackson called back, "We will be right there." "About time," Martha muttered, but she was smiling when they came inside, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Took you long enough." "You knew," Victoria accused, and Martha shrugged. "Course I knew. Been obvious to anyone with eyes. I am just glad you both finally figured it out." That night, after dinner, Jackson rode home, but not before kissing Victoria thoroughly on the porch, a promise of more to come. She floated back inside, her lips still tingling, her heart singing. "You made the right choice," Martha said, hugging her tightly. "He will be good to you, my boy, and you will be good for him." "I hope so," Victoria said. "I really hope so." Over the next few weeks, Victoria and Jackson courted properly, or as properly as one could in the isolated wilderness. He took her on long rides across his ranch, showing her every corner of the property he was building. She met his hands, the men who helped run the cattle operation. They were rough and weathered, but they tipped their hats to her with respect and welcomed her warmly when Jackson introduced her as his intended. She learned the rhythm of ranch life, the early mornings and hard work, the satisfaction of tending to animals and seeing the fruits of labor. Jackson taught her to ride better, to rope, to read the weather and the land. She taught him to cook more than just beans and bacon, to appreciate the small comforts of a well-kept home. They worked together, laughed together, planned together. And slowly Victoria's fear began to fade, because Jackson was consistent. He showed her every day, through his actions and his words, that he meant what he said. When she flinched at sudden movements, he moved more slowly. When she had nightmares about drowning, he held her and reminded her she was safe. When she struggled with trusting her own judgment, he encouraged her to make decisions and respected them, even when he disagreed. "You know what you want," he told her one day, when she hesitated over which calf to sell at market. "Trust your instincts, they are good." And gradually she did. Spring bloomed across Colorado in a riot of wildflowers and new grass. The cattle, released from winter pastures, spread across Jackson's land like a living tide. Scout, the young colt, grew more confident under Victoria's patient training, until he was following her around like a devoted puppy. Life settled into something beautiful and peaceful, and Victoria found herself happy in a way she had never known was possible. But there was still one shadow hanging over them, one unresolved piece of the past. Richard still lived in Fort Lyon, just 10 miles away, still believing he had gotten away with murder. And as long as that remained true, Victoria could not fully move forward. "I want him to face justice," she told Jackson one evening. They were sitting by the creek that ran through his property, watching the water tumble over smooth stones. "I do not want him to pay with his life, but I want people to know what he did. I want him to lose his reputation, his business, everything he values. I want him to understand that he did not win." "What did you have in mind?" Jackson asked carefully. Victoria had been thinking about this for weeks, ever since she had decided to stay. "There is a territorial marshal who comes through Fort Lyon every few months. Hank Thompson. I met him once at a church social. He seemed like a fair man, someone who cared about real justice. What if we went to him? Told him the truth? I know it is my word against Richard's, but with your testimony about seeing him push me, maybe that would be enough." "It might be," Jackson said slowly. "But it is risky. We would have to go back to Fort Lyon, face your husband. He might try something." "I know." Victoria's jaw set. "But I am tired of hiding. I am tired of letting him think he won. And I do not want to build our life together on a foundation of lies and fear. I want to face him on my terms and make sure he can never hurt anyone else the way he hurt me." Jackson studied her for a long moment, then nodded. All right, if that is what you want, I am with you. We will do this together. But we are going to do it smart, with a plan, and we are not taking any chances with your safety. Agreed, Victoria said, and felt a weight lift from her shoulders. This was the right decision. She could feel it. They spent the next week preparing. Jackson sent a message to Marshal Thompson through a trusted contact, requesting a meeting in Fort Lyon on a specific date. He made arrangements for several of his ranch hands to accompany them, men he trusted absolutely. Martha insisted on coming as well, ready to provide her own testimony about Victoria's condition when she had been pulled from the lake. That man is going to answer for what he did, Martha said grimly, even if I have to shame him in front of the whole town myself. The day of the meeting arrived, warm and clear. Victoria dressed carefully in her blue dress, the one Jackson had given her, and braided her hair with steady hands. She was nervous but not afraid. She had Jackson beside her and the truth on her side. That would have to be enough. They rode into Fort Lyon in the late morning, a group of 7 including Jackson, Victoria, Martha, and 4 ranch hands. People stopped to stare as they passed, recognizing Victoria, their faces shocked and confused. Whispers followed in their wake. Ghosts did not ride into town on horseback after all. Marshal Thompson was waiting at the sheriff's office, a tall man with gray hair and a weathered face that had seen too much of life's darkness. He listened intently as Victoria told her story, his expression growing harder with each word. Jackson provided his account of what he had witnessed at the lake. Martha described Victoria's condition when she had been brought to the cabin, half drowned and in shock. When they finished, the marshal sat back in his chair, his fingers steepled under his chin. That is quite a tale, he said finally. And I believe you. I have known Richard Owens for 5 years, and there has always been something about him that did not sit quite right with me. Too smooth, too perfect. Men like that usually have something to hide. What happens now? Victoria asked. Now, I bring him in for questioning, Thompson said, and we see how he reacts to the news that his dead wife is not so dead after all. Guilty men tend to reveal themselves when they are caught off guard. They found Richard at his store, chatting pleasantly with customers as if he did not have a care in the world. Victoria watched from across the street, Jackson's steadying hand on her shoulder, as Marshal Thompson approached. She saw Richard's face when the marshal spoke to him, saw the color drain from his features, saw his gaze dart around wildly before landing on her, standing in plain view. For a moment, their eyes met across the distance. Victoria saw shock, then fury, then something that might have been fear. She lifted her chin and held his stare, refusing to look away. She was not his victim anymore. She was his accuser. Richard tried to run. He made it 3 steps before Jackson's ranch hands blocked his path. The marshal clapped him in irons, reading out charges in a loud, clear voice that carried down the street. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. The crowd that had gathered gasped and murmured, shock rippling through them. This is insane, Richard shouted, struggling against the restraints. She fell through the ice. I tried to save her. This is all lies. Then why did you ride away and leave her to drown? Jackson asked, stepping forward. I was there. I saw you push her, saw you stand and watch while she went under, and I will testify to that in any court in the territory. Richard's face contorted with rage. Who are you? You have got no right to interfere in matters between a man and his wife. She stopped being your wife the moment you tried to kill her, Jackson said coldly. And I have got every right to protect the woman I love. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Victoria felt her cheeks heat, but she did not look away from Richard. Let him see that she had moved on, that she had found real love. Let it eat at him. Marshal Thompson hauled Richard toward the jail, the disgraced merchant still protesting his innocence. Victoria watched him go, feeling a strange mix of triumph and sadness. She had won, but the victory felt hollow. 3 years of her life wasted on a man who had never valued her at all. You all right? Jackson asked softly. I think so, Victoria said. It is strange. I thought I would feel more vindicated or happy or something, but mostly I just feel tired. That is because you have been carrying this weight for so long, Martha said, joining them. Give it time. The relief will come when your heart catches up with your head. The trial was held 2 weeks later, a swift affair thanks to Jackson's eyewitness testimony and the investigation that uncovered Richard's mistress, who broke down under questioning and admitted that Richard had promised to marry her once his wife was dead. The jury deliberated for less than an hour before returning a guilty verdict. Richard Owens was sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison, his property and assets seized to compensate his victim. Victoria attended the sentencing, sitting in the courtroom with Jackson's hand clasped tightly in hers. When the judge read the sentence, Richard turned to look at her, his face twisted with hatred. You ruined my life, he spat. No, Victoria said clearly, her voice carrying through the courtroom. You did that yourself. I just made sure you could not ruin anyone else's. As the marshals led him away, Victoria felt something shift inside her. The fear that had lived in her chest for 3 years loosened its grip, finally releasing her. She was free. Truly, completely free. Come on, Jackson said gently. Let us go home. Home. The word had never sounded so beautiful. They were married on a Sunday in late May, in the small church in a town 20 miles from Fort Lyon, far enough from the scandal but close enough to their ranch. Martha stood up as Victoria's attendant, tears streaming down her face. Jackson's ranch foreman served as his best man, grinning widely. It was a simple ceremony, no grand decorations or elaborate dress, but Victoria had never felt more like a bride. When Jackson slipped the ring onto her finger, a simple gold band he had purchased in Denver, Victoria felt her own tears start. I promise to love and cherish you, he said, his voice steady and sure. To stand by you in good times and bad. To build a life with you based on trust and respect and partnership. From this day forward, you are my equal, my partner, my love, always. I promise to trust you, Victoria said, her voice shaking with emotion. To let you into my heart fully, without fear. To build this life with you side by side. To love you with everything I am, always. The kiss they shared was sweet and full of promise, the beginning of their forever. The wedding supper was held at the ranch, under the open sky, with music and dancing and laughter. Victoria wore her blue dress and flowers in her hair, and Jackson could not stop staring at her like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. They danced together as the sun set, painting the world in shades of gold and crimson. Happy? Jackson asked, pulling her close. Happier than I ever thought possible, Victoria said honestly. Thank you for saving me. Not just from the lake, but from everything that came after. You saved yourself, Jackson said. I just helped clear the path. Then thank you for that. Victoria rested her head on his shoulder, swaying to the music. I love you, Jackson Turner. I am so glad you were tracking that elk. Jackson laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Fate works in mysterious ways. But I am glad too. So very glad. They stayed at the ranch, building their life together one day at a time. Victoria threw herself into the work, discovering a talent for managing the business side of the operation. She kept the books, negotiated with buyers, planned for the future. Jackson ran the day-to-day operations, working alongside his men to care for the growing herd. Together, they made the ranch prosper in ways Jackson had only dreamed of. Martha stayed with them, taking over the main house while Jackson and Victoria built a small cabin of their own on a rise overlooking the creek. It was simple but cozy, with a large fireplace and windows that let in the morning sun. Victoria planted a garden, growing vegetables and herbs and flowers. She learned to preserve food for the winter, to make candles and soap, to do all the things a ranch wife needed to know. But she was more than just a wife. She was a partner, an equal. Jackson asked her opinion on every major decision, valued her input, respected her judgment. When they disagreed, they talked it through until they found a solution they both could live with. He never raised his voice in anger, never tried to control her choices, never made her feel less than. And slowly, the last remnants of Victoria's fear dissolved, replaced by a deep, abiding trust. Their first winter together was harsh, but they weathered it side by side, keeping each other warm through the long, dark nights. When spring came again, bringing new calves and fresh grass, Victoria realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be sure, then told Jackson one evening as they sat on the porch of their cabin watching the sunset. "I think I am with child," she said, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Jackson's face went through a series of emotions: shock, joy, wonder, all in the space of a few seconds. "Truly?" he asked, his voice rough. "Truly." Victoria smiled, nervous but excited. "Are you happy? Happy?" Jackson pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I am over the moon, terrified but over the moon. We are going to be parents." "We are," Victoria said, and felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. "Our baby. Ours." The months that followed were filled with preparation and anticipation. Martha took charge, making sure Victoria did not overwork herself, dosing her with herbal teas when the morning sickness grew bad. Jackson became ridiculously overprotective, worrying over every little thing until Victoria had to firmly tell him she was pregnant, not made of glass. I know," he said, chastened. "I just want you both to be safe and healthy." "We will be," Victoria assured him. "Women have been having babies since the dawn of time. I will be fine." And she was. On a cold December morning, with Martha attending and Jackson pacing a hole in the cabin floor, Victoria delivered a healthy baby boy. He was red-faced and squalling, with a shock of dark hair and his father's blue eyes. Jackson held him with shaking hands, his face full of wonder and love. "He is perfect," he breathed. "Absolutely perfect." "What should we name him?" Victoria asked, exhausted but happy, watching her husband cradle their son. Jackson thought for a moment, then said, "What about Samuel? It was my father's name." "Samuel Turner," Victoria said, testing the name. "I like it. Hello, Samuel. Welcome to the world." Little Samuel was a happy baby, easygoing and curious about everything. He grew quickly, reaching for toys, smiling at his parents, filling the cabin with noise and life. Jackson was a devoted father, patient and playful, carrying the boy everywhere on his broad shoulders. Victoria watched them together and felt her heart overflow with gratitude. This was her family. This was her life. And it was everything she had never dared to hope for. When Samuel was 6 months old, Martha fell ill with pneumonia. Despite their best efforts, despite the doctor they brought in from Denver, she slipped away peacefully one night, Jackson holding one of her hands and Victoria holding the other. "Take care of each other," Martha whispered, her voice barely audible. "And take care of my boy. Samuel, he is my legacy now." "We will," Victoria promised through her tears. "I promise." They buried Martha on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree she had loved, with a simple marker that read, "Beloved Aunt and Friend." Jackson grieved hard, the loss of his last remaining family hitting him deeply. But Victoria was there, holding him through the worst of it, reminding him that Martha had lived a good life and had been happy at the end, surrounded by love. "She gave me so much," Jackson said one night, staring at the fire. "Took me in when I had nothing, helped me build this ranch. And then she gave me you, in a way. If she had not been here, you would have had no place to stay, and I never would have gotten to know you." "She was special," Victoria agreed, "and she loved you so much. She would want you to be happy, to keep living fully." "I know." Jackson reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together. "And I will. For her. For you. For Samuel. For all of us." Life continued, as it always does. Samuel grew into a toddler, then a little boy, curious and brave and full of his father's quiet strength and his mother's resilience. The ranch prospered, growing year by year. Jackson hired more hands, expanded the herd, bought more land. Victoria kept the books and managed the household, raising their son and planning for the future. And 2 years after Samuel's birth, Victoria gave Jackson a daughter. They named her Martha, after the woman who had helped save them both. She had her mother's dark eyes and delicate features, and from the moment she was born, she had her father wrapped around her tiny finger. 2 children, Jackson marveled, holding baby Martha while Samuel climbed into his lap to peer at his new sister. We have got 2 perfect children. We are blessed, Victoria agreed, watching her family with a full heart. So very blessed. The years flowed by like the creek that ran through their property, steady and constant. Samuel and Martha grew, learning to ride and rope, to help with the ranch work, to appreciate the land that was their heritage. Jackson taught them about responsibility and hard work. Victoria taught them about kindness and courage. Together they built a family grounded in love and respect, the kind of home Victoria had always dreamed of but never thought she would have. When Samuel was 10 and Martha was 8, Victoria discovered she was pregnant again. She was 36 years old now, and this pregnancy was harder than the others. She spent much of it resting, while Jackson fussed over her constantly, and the children tried their best to be helpful. "I am fine," Victoria kept insisting, but Jackson was not convinced. "You are carrying my child," he said firmly. "You will rest as much as you need to, and that is final." Victoria rolled her eyes but complied, secretly touched by his concern. Even after 12 years of marriage, his love still took her breath away sometimes. The way he looked at her, the way he touched her so gently, the way he never missed an opportunity to tell her he loved her. She had been so lucky, she thought, that day on the frozen lake. Lucky that Jackson Turner had been tracking an elk. Lucky that he had been brave enough to break through the ice. Lucky that he had seen her as worth saving. The baby, another boy, arrived in late summer. They named him Robert, and he was a surprise in every way, more boisterous than Samuel had been, more demanding than Martha. But he was loved fiercely by the entire family, the baby who completed them. 3 children, Jackson said one evening, watching Victoria nurse the baby while Samuel and Martha played nearby. Our family, Victoria echoed, smiling at him over Robert's dark head. I never imagined, back in that frozen lake, that my life could turn out like this, that I could be this happy. I knew, Jackson said softly. From the moment I pulled you from that water, I knew you were someone special, someone worth fighting for. I am just grateful you gave me a chance to prove it. You have proven it every day for the past 12 years, Victoria said. You are the best man I have ever known, Jackson Turner, and I love you more now than I did the day we married. Same here, Jackson said, his voice rough with emotion. Every single day I wake up grateful that you chose to stay, that you chose me. The children grew, the ranch prospered, and the years continued to pass in a blur of seasons and celebrations. Samuel grew into a fine young man, serious and hardworking, with plans to take over the ranch someday. Martha was spirited and kind, with a gift for horses that rivaled her mother's. Robert was the wild child, always getting into mischief, keeping everyone on their toes. Victoria watched them all with pride and love, marveling at how her life had transformed. She thought sometimes of Richard, rotting in prison, and felt only pity. He had thrown away the chance for real happiness, real love in pursuit of control and power. And he had lost everything because of it. She, on the other hand, had gained everything. A husband who cherished her, children who brought joy to every day, a home built on trust and partnership, a life rich with purpose and meaning. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Jackson took Victoria back to the creek where he had first told her he loved her. The children were old enough now to manage on their own for an evening, and Jackson had packed a picnic dinner. They sat on a blanket, watching the water flow past, the same way they had so many years before. 20 years, Victoria marveled. It feels like a lifetime, and like no time at all, both at once. Best 20 years of my life, Jackson said, pouring them each a glass of wine. And here's to 20 more, 40 more, however many we get. They clinked glasses, then Jackson set his aside and pulled out a small box. Victoria's eyes widened as he opened it to reveal a necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small sapphire pendant. Jackson, it is beautiful, she breathed. It reminded me of your eyes, he said, fastening it around her neck. And I wanted you to have something special, something to mark this milestone. Victoria touched the pendant, then leaned in to kiss him. Thank you. For this. For everything. For saving me and loving me and building this life with me. You are my home, Jackson Turner. You always will be. And you are mine, Jackson said, pulling her close. My heart. My love. My everything. They stayed by the creek until the stars came out, talking and laughing and remembering all the struggles they had overcome, all the joys they had shared, the family they had built together, the legacy they would leave behind. When they finally walked back to the cabin, hand in hand, Victoria felt at peace. Her journey had been hard, marked by pain and fear and loss, but it had led her here, to this man, this life, this love. And she would not change a single moment of it, because every step had been necessary to bring her home. Years continued to pass in comfortable rhythm. Samuel married a kind woman named Elizabeth from a neighboring ranch, and they gave Jackson and Victoria their first grandchild, a little girl named Victoria Rose. Martha, true to her independent spirit, decided she wanted to study medicine, heading to Denver to train as a nurse despite the raised eyebrows from the community. Jackson and Victoria supported her fully, proud of her courage and determination. Robert, the youngest, showed an aptitude for breeding horses and began building his own small herd with his father's help. Jackson's hair turned silver at the temples and lines deepened around his eyes, but he was still strong and capable, still running the ranch with the same dedication he always had. Victoria's dark hair gained threads of white, and her hands grew more weathered, but she was still vibrant, still sharp, still the heart of their family. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun set over the land they had built together. Sometimes they talked about the past, about that day on the frozen lake that had changed everything. Sometimes they talked about the future, about grandchildren, and the legacy they were leaving. Sometimes they just sat in comfortable silence, holding hands, needing no words. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not been there that day? Jackson asked one evening. If I had not seen Richard push you? I try not to, Victoria admitted, because the alternative is too painful to imagine. But sometimes I think about it, and then I realize that even if you had not been there, even if I had died that day, at least my last thought would have been defiance. Richard did not break me, no matter how hard he tried. And that matters. You are the strongest person I know, Jackson said, lifting her hand to kiss her knuckles. You faced death and refused to give up. You faced fear and chose courage. You faced heartbreak and opened yourself to love again. That takes a strength most people do not have. I had help, Victoria said, leaning her head on his shoulder. I had you. I had Martha. I had people who believed in me when I did not believe in myself. That made all the difference. We all need people who believe in us, Jackson agreed, and I am just grateful I got to be one of yours. They grew old together, surrounded by children and grandchildren, watching their ranch and their legacy continue to thrive. Samuel took over the day-to-day operations, running things with the same integrity and dedication his father had shown. Martha returned from Denver as a qualified nurse, setting up a small practice in the nearby town and helping the community. Robert married and had twins, two boys who were as wild and energetic as their father had been. Through it all, Jackson and Victoria remained the foundation, the love story that had started in tragedy and transformed into triumph. They celebrated 50 years of marriage, surrounded by 4 generations of family, a testament to the life they had built together. Jackson's health began to fail in his 70s, his heart growing weaker despite the doctor's best efforts. He faced it with the same calm courage he had faced everything in his life, holding Victoria's hand and telling her not to worry. "I have had a good life," he told her one evening, his voice weaker than it used to be. "A better life than I ever dreamed of. And it is all because of you, because I was stubborn enough to break through that ice and pull you out. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Victoria said, tears streaming down her face. "The best was loving me afterward, showing me what real love looked like. You changed my life, Jackson Turner. You saved it in every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Jackson said, cupping her weathered cheek with a trembling hand. "And I will love you beyond this life and into whatever comes next. You are my heart, Victoria. Always." He passed peacefully in his sleep a week later, Victoria curled up beside him, their hands clasped together one last time. The family gathered to mourn him, to celebrate the incredible man he had been, the legacy of love and integrity he had left behind. Victoria grieved, but she did not shatter. Jackson had taught her too well, had shown her that she was strong enough to weather any storm. She continued on, helping Samuel run the ranch, spoiling her grandchildren and great-grandchildren, staying active and engaged with life. On the anniversary of Jackson's death, she rode out to the creek where they had shared so many important moments. She sat on the bank, watching the water flow past, and talked to him as if he were still there beside her. "I miss you," she said. "Every single day I miss you. But I am not alone. Our family is thriving, Jackson. Samuel is doing a wonderful job with the ranch. Martha has helped birth half the babies in the county. Robert's horse breeding program is gaining recognition across Colorado. And our grandchildren, they are amazing. You would be so proud." The wind whispered through the cottonwood trees, and Victoria smiled, feeling a sense of peace settle over her. "I know you are waiting for me," she said softly. "And one day, not too long from now, I will come find you. But until then, I am going to keep living. Keep loving this family we built. Keep honoring the second chance you gave me when you pulled me from that frozen lake. I love you, Jackson Turner. I will love you forever." Victoria lived to be 89 years old, sharp and vital until the very end, when she finally slipped away peacefully in her sleep. Surrounded by family, there was a smile on her face. Her children and grandchildren mourned her, but they also celebrated her, this remarkable woman who had survived the unthinkable and transformed it into something beautiful. They buried her next to Jackson, under the cottonwood trees, with a simple marker that read, "Victoria Owens Turner, beloved wife, mother, grandmother." She chose courage. And in the years that followed, the family she and Jackson had built continued to grow and thrive, generation after generation, rooted in the love story that had begun on a frozen lake in Colorado, when one man refused to let another man's cruelty win, when one woman chose to trust again, and when 2 broken souls found healing in each other. The ranch remained in the Turner family, passed down through the generations, a testament to the partnership and love that had built it. And on quiet evenings, when the sun set over the Colorado plains, painting the sky in gold and crimson, you could almost see 2 figures sitting by the creek, holding hands, watching the water flow past, together forever, in the way that really mattered. Their love had not just survived, it had flourished, creating ripples that spread far beyond their own lives, touching everyone who came after. Samuel's children told their children about the grandmother who had survived attempted murder and built a new life from nothing, about the grandfather who had risked his own life to save a stranger and found his soulmate in the process. The story became family legend, passed down through the decades, a reminder that courage and love can triumph over even the darkest circumstances. The cabin where Victoria had first recovered, where she had fallen in love with Jackson, was preserved and maintained by the family. It became a place of pilgrimage for the Turner descendants, a reminder of where it all began. Inside, they kept Victoria's blue dress, the one Jackson had given her, carefully preserved. They kept the simple gold wedding band she had worn for 65 years. They kept the letters Jackson had written her during the few times they had been separated, full of love and longing and promises to come home soon. The story of Jackson and Victoria Turner became more than just family history. It became a symbol of resilience, of the power of second chances, of the transformative nature of real love. Writers came to interview the family, to document the remarkable tale. A book was written, then another. The frozen lake where Victoria had nearly died became a landmark, a place where people came to reflect on survival and courage. But for the Turner family, it was simply the story of their beginning, the foundation upon which everything else was built. And they carried it forward with pride, ensuring that the values Jackson and Victoria had lived by, trust, respect, partnership, courage, and unwavering love, remained at the heart of every generation. The ranch continued to prosper well into the 20th century, adapting with the times but never losing sight of its roots. And always, in the main house, there hung a portrait of Jackson and Victoria, painted on their 25th wedding anniversary. In it they stood together, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both of them looking not at the painter, but at each other. The love captured in that moment was so palpable, so real, that everyone who saw it could feel it. Below the portrait, a small plaque read simply, "Jackson and Victoria Turner, love conquers all." And it had. Despite the attempted murder, the betrayal, the fear and trauma, love had conquered. It had healed wounds that should have been fatal. It had built a family that would endure for generations. It had transformed two broken people into something whole and beautiful. The frozen lake thawed every spring, the ice melting away as if it had never been. But the legacy of what happened there, the moment when one man chose courage over indifference, when one woman chose to trust again despite every reason not to, that never melted away. It remained, solid and permanent as the mountains that ring the Colorado plains, a testament to the enduring power of love to save, to heal, and to redeem. And so the story ended as all good love stories should, with a family thriving, a legacy secured, and two souls who had found each other against all odds, together forever in memory and in the hearts of those who came after. Victoria Owens had been trapped under the ice when her husband pushed her, and Jackson Turner had broken through and pulled her up. But what they gave each other in the years that followed was so much more than rescue. They gave each other life, real life, full of meaning and purpose and joy. They gave each other home. They gave each other love that lasted beyond death, beyond time, beyond anything that tried to destroy it. It was, in the end, exactly the kind of love story the Wild West was made for, raw and real, tested by hardship, strengthened by adversity, and ultimately triumphant. A reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, even in the darkest moments, love can bloom and flourish and change the world. And that was worth everything.